judge took the stand in day 37 of the Aaron Hernandez trial in Massachusetts that had a star witness, if you will, not because of his information, because of essentially who he was. And then some of the information might play into what happens in this trial, at least to some observers. Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports, kind enough to call in on a lunch break. Dan, back on the Rich Eisen show. What happened when Mr. Krafts walked in that courtroom today?
Well, one thing, it was electric. We've had a lot of mundane testimony and anonymous figures, and Bob Krafts walks into a room 30 miles from Foxborough. The jurors were absolutely fired up for this. I mean, they were paying attention. Krafts never looked at Hernandez until they told him to identify him. That was the only time he glanced at him. And Hernandez, who often spent time looking directly at the witness, I did not think spent very much time, if at all, trying to catch Robert Krafts' eye either. I think he might have been a little embarrassed by it. So it was pretty electric. The key part of the testimony today was Krafts had shown up at 2 days after the murder back in 2013 when Hernandez had been publicly identified as the suspect. He'd gone to the Patriots Stadium, to Gillette Stadium, and worked out. And there was a huge throng of media, helicopters, everything outside. Krafts showed up for work about 8:30 in the morning. He went right down to the locker room or to the weight room to find Hernandez and sort of man-to-man say, "Do you need any help? What happened?" Pulled him into a side room and said, "Did you do this?" And Hernandez said, "No, I'm innocent." But then he said, "I hope the time of the murder comes out, because if it does, when it does, you'll know, because I was in a club at that time." Now, the problem with that excuse is he was not in a club at that time. He had been in a restaurant prior to that, on that night in Providence, but then had gone and picked up Odin Lloyd, who is the deceased. So the excuse that Hernandez gave Robert Krafts was a complete lie. And the jury is well aware that Hernandez was not in a nightclub at 3:30 in the morning when they're not even open in this part of the country. And they know that he lied to Krafts. So A, it's a lie, and B, it's an alibi that they are no longer employing because it's a lie. So it suggests a shifting story by Hernandez. So Krafts' testimony was actually, I think, very, very effective for the prosecution.
Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports joining me here. But, of course, the defense was trying to establish the fact that Bob Krafts liked Aaron Hernandez as an employee, as a patriot, that they hugged and kissed one another whenever they saw one another. And so when I see all that, Dan, is and the fact that the prosecution called Bob Krafts to the stand, it's all about, from what I'm seeing, you tell me because you're in the courtroom, I'm just reading reports like yourself, from yourself, is that everybody's trying to establish a storyline because there is no murder weapon here. And they're all trying to establish that one guy is as model a citizen as possible, despite some, dalliances potentially with the staff. And the prosecution is saying that this guy was a bad guy and was around picked up the deceased and was around the murder site at the time of the murder. And there's no murder weapon, Dan. So what does all of this mean, essentially?
They don't have a murder weapon exactly, but they do have pictures of surveillance video of Hernandez holding what has been identified as the exact same model of gun as was used in the murder. And they have extremely a shaky story by his fiancée yesterday about throwing out a mysterious box to a mysterious dumpster that she doesn't know at the behest of Aaron Hernandez. So I don't know if the gun will be a hang-up for the jury. What there really isn't is there's a lack of motive. There's just no reason for Aaron Hernandez to kill Odin Lloyd, who was the boyfriend, was his fiancee's sister's boyfriend, and they love smoking pot together and hanging out together. The motive would really be, this is what Aaron Hernandez does. He tends to shoot and kill people. The problem is they cannot admit to evidence all of the other times he has shot and or been accused of killing people. So in a vacuum, you can't just say this is what the guy does. If they could try all these cases together, it would be a 100% guilt. But that's not how the system works.
But this is not a sequestered jury, though, Dan, right? Are they just
No, it is not. And I'm sure they have heard that there are other things, and that will be a big factor against Hernandez. What the key here was, the key thing to take away from Krafts is that when Hernandez was first asked what happened, he says, I was in a club, I wasn't there. When in fact he was. That is an absolute lie. They know. I mean, he picked Odin Lloyd up in his own car, and drove him all the way to North Attleboro. Now he could sit there and say, I wasn't the one who shot him. This other guy shot him. I was just there. I was scared. He could have come up with a million stories that would absolutely play into what he's defending himself now. But to say he was at a nightclub at the time of the murder is a complete lie, and there's no way the defense is even going to. No, the defense is not even trying to argue that because they can't. There's video. I mean, there's everything. So it suggests, why are you shifting your alibi? Why are you shifting your defense? Your initial defense, you've now changed your story.
Dan,
that's where it hurts Aaron Hernandez.
Dan, Crystal, I have a question on that, because is there any possibility the defense will say he was in a bar after it was closed down? He's a famous athlete. Curry favor with a bartender.
We have video of him driving around at 2:30 in the morning and stuff like that.
Okay.
We have video of him driving up to his house.
See, that's the whole.
They can't.
Yeah.
I agree. The bar closing at 2 is one thing, but lots of bars stay open past.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Wow.
He was not. He just wasn't there. Look, Hernandez did this to himself. If he had just erased his home video, I don't even know if they have a case, but he didn't. So there's video of him pulling up in the car. I mean, and then the car not moving the rest of the night. So unless he snuck out the back window and jogged to an after-hour club somewhere, So
yeah, Dan.
They can't do that.
Is it possible that Belichick gets called, Dan?
It does not seem likely that Belichick's going to get called. The Patriots director of security was also on the stand today.
Yes.
Hernandez told him the same story that isn't true. It doesn't. Belichick never spoke to Hernandez. You would basically bring Belichick in to discuss how the Patriots viewed him. Were they concerned about his mental well-being? They never addressed that with Krafts, so the suggestion is that that isn't going to happen. And the prosecution is expected to rest on Thursday, so we're really down to the final days. I don't expect Belichick to be called.
And then comes the issue of whether Hernandez testifies in his own defense. You hear anything on that front?
Hernandez will not testify. The defense is going to call maybe one witness, a gun expert, maybe next Monday. And they said today they expect the defense to rest after a single day. Their defense is going to be, you didn't prove it. We can't prove a false negative. This whole story doesn't make sense because they're friends. There's no motive. There's no gun. And that's what they're going with. And that is a more powerful argument to make to the jury if you don't do 3 weeks of defense. You basically say there is nothing to defend. Hernandez's big thing is that he has excellent attorneys. The facts aren't really good for him. They're not on his side, but he has tremendous attorneys who can make a great closing argument. And that's going to be his chance to beat this rap is how good his attorneys do next week during closing arguments.
So last question for you, Dan, as I've got to take a break. The jury can get this? You think the jury gets this at some point next week?
Yes. Yeah, I think they'll get it by midweek.
There you go. Dan,
thanks. We could
thanks.
see the defense go Monday. Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry.
Thanks.
Go ahead. Please, go ahead.
Defense get it Monday, rest Monday, closing arguments Tuesday or Wednesday, and then jury's on it.
Dan, I appreciate it. We'll have you back on soon, hopefully.
Thanks, Rich.
You bet. That's Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.